He walked away from one of the most watched off-road channels on YouTube. Not because he was pushed out, not because of a falling out with the crew, and not because the money ran dry, but because he finally admitted to himself that the thing making his father famous was never the thing he actually loved. That man is Rudy Wetzel, the eldest son of Matt Wetzel, the face behind Matt's Off-Road Recovery, a channel built in the Red Rock Desert of Hurricane, Utah that grew to nearly 2 million subscribers on the back of impossible rescues, custom rigs, and a team that felt more like a family than a crew. By the time this video is over, you'll understand exactly why Rudy left, what he's been building in its place, and why the story of a son stepping out of his father's shadow is more complicated and more interesting than anything the comments section ever figured out. There's a version of Rudy's story that most people believe. A son born into a YouTube dynasty, trained on the Utah trails before he could legally drive on a highway, who one day decided he'd had enough and quit the family business. That version is easy. It fits in a comment. But it leaves out the parts that actually explain why Rudy Wetzel isn't just a former cast member. He's one of the most quietly ambitious figures the off-road YouTube world has produced. And to understand any of it, you have to start at the beginning. Before the channel, before the cameras, before the yellow Jeep called the Banana became one of the most recognizable vehicles in automotive YouTube history. Matt Wetzel didn't start as a YouTube creator. He spent over a decade in roofing, working 10 years as an employee before co-founding a company called Skyline Roofing. When that chapter ended, he pivoted hard, buying the assets of a towing company in 2009 and establishing what would eventually become Winder Towing, the business he still operates today. The off-road side came later, and it came because customers kept getting stuck in places no standard tow truck could reach. The deeper into southern Utah's trail systems those calls took him, the more he realized he needed rigs built specifically for terrain that would destroy a conventional wrecker. Rudy grew up watching that transformation happen in real time. He wasn't a kid who got handed a role on a YouTube channel. He was the son of a working tow operator who started getting called out to recoveries around the same time Rudy was learning to drive. And that proximity to the work, the fabrication, the problem-solving, the mechanical creativity, planted something in Rudy that had nothing to do with pulling stuck vehicles out of canyon washes. It had everything to do with building the machines used to do it. That distinction is the entire story. Because what Rudy inherited from his father wasn't a passion for recovery, it was a passion for fabrication. And for years, those two things existed in the same job, under the same roof, on the same channel, and from the outside they looked identical. They weren't. And here's the part that changes everything about what you just heard. One of the most important origin points in the Matt's off-road recovery story isn't Matt pulling a minivan off a cliff face. It's a 1961 Chevrolet Corvair wagon sitting in a Utah shop being converted into an off-road recovery vehicle. That build is called the Morvair. It's named for the channel, M-O-R, and the Corvair platform it started as. And Rudy was central to building it. The Morvair project represents something specific in the Wetzel story. The moment where fabrication became content, where building a custom rig stopped being a behind-the-scenes necessity and started being part of the show itself. Rudy worked alongside his father on that conversion. And it wasn't just a mechanical project. It was the proof of concept that the audience responded to builds as much as rescues. The Morvair pulled massive views. Fans followed the construction in the same way they followed the trail footage. For Rudy, that response confirmed something he already suspected. The build was the thing, not the aftermath, not the stuck Jeep dragged over boulders moment. The fabrication process itself, the welding, the design decisions, the problem-solving under a roll cage, that was where his energy actually lived. He was also operating his own Jeep Cherokee on the channel, a brown XJ, a close relative of his father's famous yellow Banana, which Rudy had wheeled on actual recoveries. Viewers knew that rig. It showed up in enough channel footage that it had its own following. What viewers didn't know at the time was that Rudy was already thinking about what it would become, not as a recovery tool, but as his own personal build project. That Jeep would later become known as the Rudicon. But before any of that could happen, Rudy had to make a decision that nobody on the channel openly discussed until after it was done. Most people who know this story stop here. But the real story starts right now. In April 2022, Rudy Wetzel left Matt's Off-Road Recovery. He had been a regular on-screen presence since the channel launched, assisting with recoveries, operating tow trucks, contributing to vehicle builds, and appearing in the kind of content that gave Matt's channel its texture beyond just the recovery footage itself. He was the eldest son. He knew the operation. He knew the audience, and he left anyway. What he said publicly, confirmed in an interview with the YouTube channel Decent Garage, is that recovering stuck vehicles was never actually his passion. That's the clean answer. But the fuller version of that answer is more specific. The production schedule at Matt's Off-Road Recovery didn't leave room for the kind of content Rudy wanted to make. The channel ran on a tight filming rhythm. Recoveries happened on a schedule. Videos went out on a cadence. There was no space in that structure for Rudy to go deep on a fabrication build that might take months, document every decision, explore every design problem, and build an audience around the process rather than the outcome. He described it as not having room to tell his own story. That framing matters, because it wasn't a complaint about his father or the channel. It was a recognition that two different creative instincts were coexisting in a format designed for one of them. Recovery content is immediate. You see the problem, you watch the solution, you feel the payoff. Fabrication content is slow, iterative, and cumulative. The payoff lives in the finished build, and getting there takes time. Rudy needed the second format. Matt's channel was the first, and one phone call, one conversation, that's all it took to change the direction of everything. The exit, when it came, was clean. Matt confirmed publicly that Rudy left on good terms, that there was no conflict behind the decision, and that he fully supported his son's choice to build something of his own. The two men stayed close. Within months of the departure, they filmed a collaboration video together. Rudy got a call from his father to help recover the banana on a trail, and that footage went up on Rudy's own channel. Not Matt's, Rudy's. That detail is small, but it matters. The collaboration was on Rudy's terms, in Rudy's format, on Rudy's platform. The channel Rudy launched is called Rudy's Adventure in Design, abbreviated to RAD, which is exactly the kind of name you'd expect from someone who grew up in the Utah off-road world and has a very clear sense of their own identity. The content he produces there is what he described in his own words as adventurous entertainment, a blend of custom fabrication, desert racing, hunting, fishing, and personal builds. It's not a recovery channel, it doesn't need to be. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me, because this next part is why the whole story matters. The build at the center of Rudy's adventure and design is the Rudicon. It started as that brown 1999 Jeep Cherokee XJ, the same rig that appeared on Matt's channel during actual recovery operations. In Rudy's hands, it became something different entirely. The Rudicon runs on 1-ton axles, rides on 40-inch tires, has full hydraulic assist steering, and carries a supercharger. That's not a recovery vehicle. That's a purpose-built off-road machine built for extreme terrain, competition, and the kind of wheeling that exists well outside the scope of a towing call. The transformation from recovery rig to competition build is the story Rudy wanted to tell on camera. And it's a story that required time, episodes, and an audience willing to follow a build series from the first cut to the finished product. He found that audience. By his own account, Rudy's Adventure in Design crossed 250,000 subscribers within less than 2 years of the channel launching. That number reflects something real. There was an audience that wanted to follow Rudy specifically, not as Matt's son, not as a member of a crew, but as a builder with his own vision. He also picked up industry sponsorships, including an affiliation with Rough Stuff Specialties, one of the established names in off-road fabrication parts. That kind of partnership doesn't come from channel size alone. It comes from credibility in the actual off-road fabrication community and from the quality of the builds being documented. To sustain his own shop access, Rudy works for Underground Storage Solutions, welding underground safes for his employer. His boss is a longtime friend who allows Rudy to use the shop space and tools for his own personal fabrication projects outside of work hours. That arrangement is what makes the RAD channel possible. He has a real job that funds his real life, and his channel documents the work he does in his own time, on his own terms. It's not a full-time creator setup. It's the life of a working fabricator who also happens to be building a serious YouTube presence on the side. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. One thing that gets overlooked in the coverage of Rudy's departure is the timing. He left in April 2022. By the end of that same year, 3 other significant members of the Matt's off-road recovery crew had also moved on. Trevor, Tucker, and Skeeter all departed around October 2022. Matt addressed those exits publicly, confirming nobody was fired and that everyone left on good terms. But the sequence matters. Rudy's exit came first, it was voluntary, and it was followed by a period of broader roster change at the channel. None of those departures were connected to each other by any confirmed shared cause, But taken together, they reflect the natural pressure points of a channel that had grown large enough to require a professional production schedule, a roster of employees rather than friends, and a content format that didn't necessarily align with every person's individual direction. Rudy wasn't fleeing instability. He was moving towards something specific before the instability arrived, and what he built afterward reinforced that clarity. After leaving, Rudy continued to show up at off-road events alongside the MOR team. Easter Jeep Safari in Moab, the 2023 Off-Road Record Games, King of the Hammers. He competed at King of the Hammers under race number 4046, entering one of the most demanding off-road races in the country. That's not a former cast member keeping a low profile after leaving a show. That's a competitor. His father's channel was about pulling people out of the desert. Rudy's channel is about going deeper into it. And at this point in the story, most people walked away. What Rudy did instead is the part nobody talks about. The part that gets missed in most discussions of Rudy's departure is the role the Rudicon plays as a statement. Most vehicles on Matt's off-road recovery are tools. They're built to do a job. Recover a stuck vehicle, reach terrain where other trucks can't go. They're impressive because of what they can accomplish in service of someone else's problem. The Rudicon was built for one purpose: Rudy's own use. 1-ton axles and 40-inch tires and a supercharged engine don't exist because a customer needed pulling. They exist because Rudy Wetzel wanted to see how far he could push a Jeep Cherokee platform and document every step of that process on camera. That distinction between building for function and building for expression is the creative line Rudy crossed when he left the channel, and it defines everything Rad produces. He runs a Patreon under the Rad brand as well, offering deeper access to the build content for the portion of his audience that wants more than what a standard YouTube upload provides. His merchandise line is also live through his own website. None of this was available to him while he was a member of his father's crew. He was an employee. Now he's the operator. The difference isn't just professional, it's philosophical. The question people kept asking in the comments, whether Rudy would come back to Matt's channel, whether the departure signaled a permanent break, misses the point. The relationship between Matt and Rudy was never severed. They've appeared on camera together multiple times after the departure. Matt publicly backed Rudy's decision. The two men operate in the same community, attend the same events, and maintain what every available account describes as a genuinely close relationship. The departure wasn't a break. It was a division of creative labor. Matt does recoveries, Rudy does builds. Those two categories coexisted on one channel for years, and now they exist on two separate platforms, each one doing what its creator actually wants to do. And if you think that was surprising, here's what actually matters about where Rudy stands right now. By mid-2025, Rudy Wetzel had been running his own channel for over 3 years. He'd competed at King of the Hammers. He'd grown a following of more than 250,000 subscribers on a channel built entirely around fabrication content and his own personal builds. He had industry sponsorships, a merchandise line, a Patreon community, and a day job that kept the lights on without requiring the channel to be profitable on a monthly deadline. The Rudicon is still his flagship build, still being documented, still evolving. The channel continues to grow because Rudy is consistent in a way that reflects genuine motivation rather than commercial pressure. He uploads when the work is done, not when a schedule demands content. That rhythm is slower than a channel like Matt's Off-Road Recovery, which operates on the cadence of a media company. But it's also more sustainable for someone whose primary output is a physical build rather than real-time event coverage. There's also a version of this story still being written. Rudy is in a relationship with his girlfriend Janelle. He's based in southern Utah, the same region his father built his business in, and still embedded in the off-road community that gave both of them their audience. The events they share, King of the Hammers, Jeep Safari, the Off-Road Record Games, are not obligations. They're the things Rudy actually does for fun, which happens to be the same reason people started watching him in the first place. Here is what the whole story adds up to. Rudy Wetzel grew up inside a YouTube channel built by his father, contributed to some of its most technically impressive content, and then walked away at the exact moment he understood clearly enough what he wanted to build on his own to actually go do it. He was in his early 20s when he made that call. The channel he left went on to approach 2 million subscribers. The channel he built reached 250,000 on its own terms. Neither of those numbers is the point. The point is that Rudy identified the difference between doing something because it's the family business and doing something because it's your actual passion. And he made the harder choice. He stepped out from under a very large shadow at a moment when staying would have been easier, safer, and probably more immediately lucrative. What he's building at RAD is slower, more personal, and entirely his own. Whether that trade was worth it is a question only Rudy can answer. But the fact that he's still at it, still welding, still building, still competing, still documenting, suggests he already has. So here's the question for the comments. Do you think Rudy made the right call, leaving one of the biggest off-road channels on YouTube to build something from scratch on his own? Or should he have stayed and grown with his father's operation?